Everyone, I want to thank you for joining us today, this afternoon. We wanted to do something special. It's Halloween month. It's World of Darkness month. We wanted a chance to hold an open panel discussion with our most important fans as we support our crowdfunding campaigns to release new books. Before we dive into things, I know that we've got Chris Angel here who wants to give some updates on War of Ages and make an exciting announcement. We have Jason Herman and Gordon Cassidy, two of our writers on our upcoming project that we teased a couple of months ago, Laws of the Night 5th edition. Before all that, I just want to say regarding By Night Studios in general and LARP as a hobby, I think that it's the most cool, most fun hobby in the world. It's one that had an enormous impact on my life. And it's one that I want to see continue to thrive for the next 30 plus years to come. And I have to be always reminiscent of the fact that there are people who have been LARPing as long as I have been alive. And they have a huge history with this company, with the activity of vampire LARPing, and it just means a lot to them. You know, you hear so many stories of people who say that by participating in this, you know, I was improved for the better. I have such a story myself. I think that ultimately what we do as a company is all about supporting the hobby that we as fans all love. And I just want to set the table with that because I think it's really important that we convey to everyone that our primary motivation is not profit. It is the hobby itself and its health and well-being throughout the years to come. One of the things that I think is incredibly important for the hobby to be healthy and growing over the next 30 years is for there to be regular releases of new material that can excite and engage people. You know, it goes without saying that in the years between when the original Laws of the Night series stopped publishing and specific LARP materials stopped being a focus of publishers in the World of Darkness, that those were the dark ages. You know, fans of LARP went from what, you know, estimates say 100,000 or more each week playing, down to where we are now, which is, you know, maybe a tenth of that. And I think it goes without saying that the cause of that was ultimately that there was no professional organization, no company that existed to promote and support a hobby and provide a degree of professional organization to events around it. So with that said, By Night Studios' goal from the day that I took over was, let's get more content out, let's get better content out, and let's get it out much more frequently. Because if we're doing so, then there's more reasons for people to come back. And like with any game, with the notable exception of a few timeless ones like chess or checkers, you know, I like to see new material being added on a continual basis, or else I lose interest with it. And I think most players feel similarly. With that said, you know, one of the first things that BNS, when the new team took over, did was establish the content team. That content team is led by Chris Angel, a former member of the Modern Enigma Society, former national assistant national vampire store, whatever they call it. Chris, if you would unmute and take over, save me. I'm drowning.
You're fine. It's a test. No, you're fine. You know, I was the assistant national storyteller for Vampire for MES for several years, which is how I know most of the people from the community. I was in, you know, I was in MES for a decade or so, and before that I did troop games, and you know, like everybody, you know, like you always try to find a LARP and play a LARP and grow a community, and that was the goal. So yeah, so I did that for a while before joining, BNS and overseeing the writers and the artists and the book productions, which is the main thing that I assist with at BNS.
Do you think that we could segue into, now that we have more people joining chat, let's kind of talk about War of Ages. When we published the announcement for this webinar, we had a few folks reach out with feedback that they wanted to see a little bit more about the book. I figured that the best thing that we could do would be to talk about it here up front, discuss what the scenario is and what we plan to do to address some of the concerns that are out there. Chris.
Sure. So yeah, we did get some good and significant feedback. So I'm going to start by addressing that, just to say that we heard you, and we heard you, and we understand where we have failed. And our failure was not giving you the updates on the War of Ages product that you were looking for. And we'll certainly learn from that experience going forward. And by you, I mean all of you wonderful people who purchased the product or who are interested in the product, all the members of the community who want to know how it's developing. I will say, Bennett Studios historically had done Kickstarter campaigns in the past. You all know that we did a V2. We all did a V2 promotion on a sort of our own backer program. This was our first time with this group really segueing into the Kickstarter arena to promote a product. And we certainly have learned from that experience, and we will do better going forward when it comes to updates about the specific product. So all I can say is we've heard you, and we will certainly do better as we go forward with this product and with other products. So talking now about War of Ages, I can promise you it is a real thing. I have a 235-page transcript or manuscript that has gone through multiple rounds of edits, 3 to be precise. And I mention that because that's 235 pages, not inclusive of the art. So that's 235 pages of text. And then we have, about 50 plus images that are all newly created art that either you've seen previewed in the Kickstarter or previewed on some of our social media, but there'll be a lot of new art that's also included within the War of Ages book. And I mention that because, it is a process, and unfortunately the process did get delayed. Our hope and our goal was to have War of Ages done, published and printed and released come November. Unfortunately, due to a number of different issues, which I won't bore you with here, that product did get delayed. And we've been at least forthright that product has been delayed and have put out that information as often as we can. But the good news is those 235 pages have gone through 3 rounds of edits, including review by Paradox, because as all of you know, we are the official licensee of Paradox, and Paradox as our licensor reviews our products to make sure that we are true to our mission and our goal, which is to not only promote and grow the community, but to put out quality products that are true to the world of darkness and that are true to the content of the world of darkness. So Paradox has completed its review. They have approved the manuscript with some minor changes and a minor rewrite to 1 chapter. And those things are underway. So as soon as those minor changes are done, and we are able to release some of that content into the community, we had planned to do that. We will send out, because we've heard you ask for that. We know that you want that. So we do plan to release some of that material and some Kickstarter updates to you, so you can see some of the content of the book that was originally alluded to in our outline. So Johanna, who is our principal writer on that, and I know Gaia's also wrote an entire chapter on that online roleplay, but Johanna is going through the process of working in Paradox's comments. When that is finished, there'll be 1 more round of review for edits, and then Paradox will do 1 final approval on the 1 section that they requested a rewrite on. So otherwise, the rest of the manuscript is good to go once we work in Paradox's minor changes to the other sections. And after that, as you all know, when that's done, the book goes to layout. Layout's about a 2-month process. And then when layout is complete, the book will go to print. I have to go back to, we will be giving you those updates that you asked for. I think the next update that we will give you will be December, because at that point we should have some actual material that we can release out to you so you can see some of that content.
Thanks, Chris, for sharing all that. Yeah, I think generally what we would like to do is something very similar to what we did for V2, which is, get a good portion, a usable section of the book out, available for download in the near future. You know, one of the things we did for V2s, the first one that we had is the one that we released that way. Maybe we'll do something similar this time. I guess it depends on the specific way the layout artist tackles it. But generally, we're not against any suggestions that have been made to us. We just have some logistical constraints. You know, it's kind of a waterfall creation process, and if something at the start of the waterfall gets held up, then everything after it gets held up corresponding. Is that a fair statement, Chris?
I would completely agree. You know, but again, the good news is all the art's done. We have a manuscript that's close to final completion, and all of that, all of those add-ons that people participated in, like, you know, the Bee in the Book, the Bee in the Book artwork, the lore sheets, all of that collaborative writing that we had engaged in with those individuals of the community who chose to participate in that way through the Kickstarter, all of that has been done as well. So it really is just, you know, the final process of the final review. And then once we have a final draft version that you're going to see in print, we can start releasing the material. And then the only other thing is that I wanted to mention, which I guess is the announcement portion of War of Ages, is that we've also decided that for all of those who have backed that product, who purchased a PDF, either as a standalone PDF or as a PDF, in addition to a printed book, we're not going to wait for the printed book to be done to give you your PDF. As soon as the PDF is in final version, we'll go ahead and send you that so you'll have it. And then when the printed book is ready, we'll ship it later. So that's our announcement.
Could you estimate a timeline for that, Chris?
Well, we have to go through that last amount of changes that I just mentioned, where Johanna's working to incorporate those minor changes from Paradox and with that one chapter rewrite that we need to do. Johanna's actively working on it. I do not have his turnaround time yet. He hasn't given me a firm commitment as to when he will be done, but I do know that he's working on it. I do meet with him every other week to check on the status progress. I will say that once that's done, you're looking at, again, 2 months for layout, and then probably another month to print. So I'm going to say it should be, it definitely will be into early next year, I would say, before the printing starts. When layout's complete, though, we should be able to go ahead and release that PDF.
And then I think we've kind of covered War of Ages, and unless anybody has any questions with respect to it, let's hop on to discussing a few of our other initiatives we've got going on. You know, obviously we have Saturnalia coming up. You all have probably heard ad nauseum about that, so I don't really want to cover that in too much detail, and also we don't have Reverie team with us. All I'll say about it is that for those who are going to make it, I'm really looking forward to seeing you in person, and it should be a good time. Of course, we announced Laws of the Night 5th edition as a product that we're going to be releasing next year. I have two of the writers for it here with us, Corrigan and Jason. I think that they have some prepared remarks about the system, and maybe we could go ahead and let them give us kind of an overview. And then if folks have follow-up questions from there, we'll just let them hop on voice and take it and go into it. So
I just want to jump really quick to say that for those of you who are not aware of what our Laws of the Night publication is, the Laws of the Night that Jason and Corrigan will be talking about is our By Night Studios conversion book of V5 to LARP. So for those of you who may not be so familiar with that announcement of that product, but we're very excited about that being our next product, and I'll hand it over to Jason and Corrigan.
Yeah, so Corrigan is here with us today. We also have Aaron Miracle and Colleen Castor that are writers on the project, and we're really excited about this project. It's gonna be more streamlined, I think, than our current system, and it's completely compatible with V5. If you've played V5 and never LARP before, you're gonna see a lot of familiar things, which is gonna make it probably the easiest transition from tabletop to LARP that we've ever had between the two systems. And the setting is also obviously the V5 setting, where it's more of a young vampire struggle to fill a power vacuum in a world where most of the elders have been beckoned off to fight a war. And with no elder at the top, it's up to you to take control of your fate or be swallowed up by the night. Our key design elements are speed, simplicity, and versatility. We want every choice you make to be an obvious one for you and not necessarily how do I unlock the min-max potential of the system. There's not a lot of math involved. You don't have to add up a ton of numbers to get to your pool. The character sheet will be able to track most everything that you need to have, aside from obviously the specific wordings of your powers and stuff like that. We want you to spend more time role playing. And if you are involved in combat scenarios and using powers, we want that to be more you spending time describing what you are doing rather than looking stuff up, adding up numbers, things like that. Corgan, did I miss anything?
Part of the way that we've made the system faster includes removing retests. The system moves quickly, and the math is, well, let's just say you'll never have to add numbers together that are greater than 5. The system is very much on sort of a 1 to 10 scale that sort of keeps it mathematically swift and lets you move through your scenarios quickly. I suspect to the excitement of many, yes, we have removed celerity actions as well, keeping everybody involved in action scenarios from top to bottom. You won't have to sit and wait very long for your next turn.
Also, no attacker limit, so you don't have to feel bad about having a slower initiative. You will get to do something in the fight no matter what.
Yeah, you guys make a great point about mass combat and the potential for celerity to disrupt the narrative impact of what should be extremely tense scenes and end up feeling extremely, how shall we say, boring. Because celerity takes, for the majority of participants, it takes them out of things for a very long time between each action they can take, and they start to lose dynamism of what's going on.
So it takes away the storyteller. Let's be honest. Like when you have those long, drawn out kill boxes where where it takes 4 hours to resolve the combat, that's an ST tied up in that combat. So a simplified, more efficient system is of course, I'm sure, going to be welcomed by a lot of the larger clubs with that disposal of the celerity extra action rounds.
Before we get into some of the questions, we did submit our first sort of final beta draft, which will be obviously reviewed by Paradox and go through some of the same things that Chris talked about for War of Ages. We had over 60 people in various levels of playtest. I know Corrigan had a group of people that actually did some mock combat, and they were all very pleased at how fast and quick it was. He even had people in his group that had never LARPed before that thoroughly understood kind of what was going on. Obviously, perhaps not as good as some of the veteran people in his group, but it's designed to be easier for newer players to pick up.
And I'll also add that, I know Jason mentioned the beta, but for all you listening, so the alpha, slice of it, the first draft of it, as I'll call it, that also went to Paradox, and Paradox did review it. So Paradox is involved in this process as it progresses, which I mentioned because, we don't want anyone out there to have the impression that we're going to produce something, hand it to them, and they're going to, reject it outright, because that's not how this is working. It's a collaborative process of development between us as their official licensee. To produce a quality product for them and for you.
The process of the alpha and beta that I think was very helpful to us as an organization was the breadth of people that we got involved in it. Not only were we dealing with people who were mechanically sharp, the rules wizards. We invited people who were completely new to the game to beta test it, to give us that new player perspective. We had teachers, we had lawyers, we had folks who are artists and in theater, and sort of a nice broad variety of beta testers who provided a lot of different perspectives to contribute to the different aspects of this game, because ultimately the rule set should serve the setting and the narrative that we're trying to create. So taking various different perspectives in the 60+ person alpha and beta test that we were involved in, it led to chapters being rewritten and adjusted to make the information digestible, to make the information an enjoyable thing to read rather than a long slog. One of the other things that we forgot to mention, guys, is the book's going to be smaller. One of the reasons why you call it Laws of the Night is because Laws of the Night was a small, compact book. This book is not going to be a 400-page tome. It's going to be smaller, compact. You can bring it to your game, and it'll be a much faster read than other recent products. So
and more
it should be a lot of fun.
too, right? Nobody opens up Werewolf the Apocalypse 2016 and says, wow, I'm so glad I get to read these 800-page book before I had to play. No, I think that making the books more readable in a smaller format, that's all about bringing new people to the hobby. But today we're really talking to folks who are already members of the hobby. We're preaching to the choir, so to speak. I'd like to focus, if we can, as much as possible on things that I think will appeal to them. We've revamped several mechanical systems that needed revamps. We were speaking about celerity earlier. I like to take it from the old Laws of the Night edition of celerity. I use a nice metaphor for that. If you had celerity in Laws of the Night revised, which is the 1999 version, you were playing pro football, and if your opponent did not, they were on the Pee Wee team, and there was just really nothing they could do about it. 2013 BNS, Mind's Eye Theater, Vampire the Masquerade, made a lot of shifts in balance, fixed a lot of outstanding loopholes and rules that caused enormous amounts of unhealthy exploitation and cheddar, as some of us use in the gaming term. But I also think that in some ways it took the system that had been a fairly simple and lightweight one and made it feel more bulky than it is. It has so many nuanced individual rules for individual interactions, and though they all work fairly well and balanced together, what we found is that they don't lead to a person's absorbing the rules in a quick fashion. It takes some time before somebody understands how to make a character in the current edition. I've heard estimates from somewhere to 30 minutes to an hour. We're hoping to hit 10 to 20 minutes with the new edition. In fact, Corinne, you had I think done some testing on that. What was how were people coming in on building characters? What was the time it was taking them?
Depending on who they were, we were seeing anything from 15 minutes to an hour or two, depending on how they build, and also their reading speed, their processing speed, and their previous experience with BNS. Most of the new players that I saw, though, were sort of in the 45-minute range. So pretty quick, especially when they're absorbing a new system.
A lot of the people that said that they took longer than an hour basically admitted that they always take longer than an hour. They just are slower at it.
You got to spend some time on that name. You have just the right name.
We didn't ask anybody to name their characters when they went through character creation, because I'd probably still be thinking about my character name.
I do want to say one of the questions that we did receive was, will laws be compatible with our laws? Again, for those of you who may have joined us a little late, Laws of the Night is our V5 tabletop conversion. Will laws be compatible with the setting from V5 tabletop? And the answer is yes. That is, and Jason and Corrigan can speak more to that if they need to, but I think it's a resounding yes from the Binance Studios team.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's important to understand why we want that. The first and most obvious reason is that this is the current World of Darkness setting. There are so many different kinds of media coming out every day for World of Darkness. If you were a follower on the World of Darkness Discord, you'd see for every day of World of Darkness month, which is this month, they've had a new announcement from a new partner talking about a new thing that's going on. There are so many avenues for someone to find out about the current setting of Vampire that for LARP as a hobby to not embrace it would be to say, we don't want to make ourselves accessible for the next generation of players. We'd rather our games be smaller and smaller every year. And I don't think anybody wants that. I think having this compatibility is the bare minimum that's needed for the hobby to be on a upward trajectory from here on out. And needless to say, there are folks who have their opinions on the differences in settings. I personally, as a storyteller, never really cared because to me, the mechanics themselves were what mattered. And I could take the mechanics and put them in whatever setting I, as a storyteller, felt was appropriate for my game. And I hope that others feel the same.
I would like to say that our book is setting wise, not mechanically, setting wise is 100% V5. We are not changing any of the setting at all. The beckoning is there, the Tremere schism is there. One of our opening chapters is going to cover all the major plot points of what makes V5 V5. But most of the core book is going to be the conversion of those mechanics. And those mechanics should all be very familiar, but yet we tried to simplify a number of things. Off the top of my head, and I think Corrigan's going to talk a little bit about this later, in tabletop backgrounds are 5 dots. We've shortened those to 3. We've completely streamlined how backgrounds work with each other. The character sheet is virtually identical on the front page. We've got the 9 attributes. We've got all the skills. There's only one skill change we made. Instead of athletics being both your dodge and shooting stuff pool, we added a marksmanship skill for shooting so that you're not always good at shooting and dodging at the same time. But the sheet's going to be very familiar. We've added a couple more things to help you track things better, so you don't have to constantly look up in the book what numbers you have to add up. We have the same sort of, I like to call it talent trees for the disciplines now. One of the best things that I like, and I guess I'm jumping ahead to one of the questions that I'm most excited about, is that each discipline dot gives you a choice of power. It's not like you buy Potence 1 and you get the Potence 1 power. There are now choices, which means that, if I make a Brujah, Corrigan makes a Brujah, and Chris makes a Brujah, they're all going to be different for the most part because we're all going to choose different powers. And that's one of the meaningful choices, what I mentioned a lot, that makes a character unique to what you are building and not just, okay, you're playing a Brujah, I pretty much know what your skill set is, so to speak.
Yeah, I used to play a character named Joey. He was a member of an all Brujah gang. And when we submitted our character sheets the first time in Orlando, we just submitted the same sheet 4 times. That's that's how it was, because there really wasn't any room for that kind of decision making, because there was just one true build that was best at that time based on the experience we had. I'm very excited to hear that the team is working on making things a little bit more modular, while not overly adding the complexity.
We've tried to eliminate the must-haves. Like you either have this power or you don't, and you're just worse because of it. But real quick about the other things, like hunger is still there, rousing is still there, touchstones, convictions, all of the clans that are out currently will all be in the core book. That includes the ones in the companion like Ravnos and Salubri. They all have the same number of powers. We don't want you to have to wait. Like if you like something specific, we don't want you to have to necessarily wait for like book 3 to get your thing.
Well, I think this, I know the proposed question was, will laws be compatible with the setting from V5 tabletop completely? I think not only have we addressed that question, I think we've gone further to the, how will tabletop V5 V5 translate to new V5 LARP, which is another question that was posed. So I think we've addressed those two questions from the audience. There was a question posed about timeline. What is the timeline for V5? When will it be produced? I'm going to talk about timeline for a minute because I also want to address a War of Ages issue on timeline. Please know, to all of you listening who have invested in War of Ages or waiting on that product, that the V5 conversion, the Laws of the Night, will not delay the production and has not delayed the production of War of Ages. We intentionally have different writer teams on both products, so that way things can continue to move forward on both products. And the hope is that because we're creating parallel products at the same time, that this will help shorten our delivery time between one product and the next. So it's unlike before where, old BNS may have wrote a book and then 4 years later put out another book. That's not our goal. Our goal is to help grow the community. And how do we grow the community? We grow the community by giving consistent quality product. So that is what we're building towards. So please know that this announcement and this discussion about the V5 conversion will not be delaying War of Ages in any way. Just wanted to put that out there. As for timeline, I will say Jason, Corrigan, Aaron, Colleen, they are like writing workhorses. They put pen to paper and then like stacks and stacks of manuscripts are written and under review. They're well ahead of their timeline as far as producing the written system product. Once the written system, and that's what they're working on right now. So we're clear, they're working on the system. They're working on the core underlining system. Once that system is done, then we'll start producing, the books, hopefully in rapid succession, that will incorporate that system into the appropriate type of V5 book, such as a core book, and then all the other types of books that then will stream off of it. I don't know if you guys want to comment anything about that.
Yeah, real quickly. So we have outlines for multiple books after the core book. The core book is in my opinion, ready to be reviewed in a final beta format. But we have written all of the mechanics that we plan to put in our subsequent books. And we did that hoping that then allows us to avoid power creep, so that the powers that are written for book 4, for example, aren't suddenly just better than the stuff that we wrote first, because we wrote it all at once. So we've internally play tested and balanced all the powers together. And the beta reviewers, the alpha reviewers also reviewed those mechanics as well.
And again, because Binance Studios is still a small company at the end of the day, we do intend to do a Kickstarter campaign. Someone asked if we intend to do a Kickstarter campaign or some sort of crowdfunding campaign on this product. The answer to that is yes, and it will be sometime next year, but in 2023. But we plan to do it a little bit differently than we did War of Ages. And I say that because War of Ages, that product had not been written. That product was a goal, a desire, and you all made that possible. And again, we thank you for your support to make that possible. But that's why we weren't able to preview pages of it or art from it during that Kickstarter campaign. Here we intend to have content at least in a workable format for display as part of that Kickstarter. So I wanted to put that out there.
And the crowdfunding campaigns are so important for these books. I think this is something that some people know, but not everybody knows. 95% of every book that's ever going to be sold of any release that Binance Studios has ever had has come through their Kickstarter campaigns. And, part of that is because LARPing is a networked hobby, and as we all know, one book could serve an entire troop. And so after the initial big marketing push, the books every so often, and especially like when a new troop is about to form, we'll see people come in and purchase them. But it's not a regular everyday off the shelf, I'm just adding to my collection type thing that people do, like they can do with tabletop or novels or things that can be enjoyed on a more individual level, as opposed to with a large group around you. So again, everyone who's on this call is either a team member or has supported one of our Kickstarter campaigns. Thank you. Without you, it wouldn't be possible to put these books out. these campaigns are critical to their success, and they're the only way, I think, really, for the hobby to be sustainable in its present format. Now, maybe if it grows to be 10 times larger than it is, maybe that changes. But we have to get there first. Speaking of the title, I'd like to just address that briefly. Some folks have had some comments about the Laws of the Night title. They either, we kind of got two different perspectives, well, three different perspectives. The first perspective, and the majority of perspectives, was, oh, that's a really cool callback. We look forward to the new edition. The less positive reactions kind of came in two forms. One was that you shouldn't take the old format's name because that thing was special and shouldn't change. My response to that in brief is that there already were two books named Laws of the Night. There was Laws of the Night 2nd edition and Laws of the Night Revised. The first book was called The Masquerade. I think that the old BNS made a decision in 2013 to move away from the Laws of the Night branding with Mind's Eye Theater, Vampire the Masquerade. But I think that moving back to the Laws of the Night branding is probably a good idea for the future. And it's also a bit aspirational. It was before my time LARPing, but I've heard the story so many times of these huge city games where any town, any city you came to, you could find a game with 100+ players. And that was during Laws of the Night's heyday. We're calling this Laws of the Night 5th edition because we want to be aspirational to that. We're not calling back to the old rules. I was a storyteller for Laws of the Night for a couple of years before moving to the BNS system. And I just remember having this big red pen that we had to just mark stuff out of all the time because of all the stuff that was rather problematic in those old books. We're not going back to that, but we are resuming the smaller, more portable, and more affordable manual section because unlike at a table where you can have a 700-page book and just rest it on the table and while you're out in the community, you're acting, you can't code around a large book and reference it during play. It just simply isn't possible. And so we want to be cognizant of the usage of our materials for supporting the hobby. Now, does that mean that we won't necessarily release a hardcover, art book version of the new edition? No, we very well might do that, maybe as a Kickstarter stretch goal or something of that nature. But the core product, the product that will be for the majority of people, will be the smaller, more portable, and more affordable edition.
So Ryan, if I can build off of what you just said, you talked about the products and and accessibility and usefulness. One of the questions that we do have posed to us is, will Laws of the Night V5 be on the SRD? Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we're going to revamp the SRD for the new edition.
For those who don't know, what is the SRD, Ryan, and where can they find it? Yeah.
It's funny because we originally didn't want to call it an SRD, and now we do. Now nobody has a problem with it. An SRD is a reference to something that I think appeared first with Dungeons and Dragons and then was later adopted by Pathfinder, a system reference document. It's essentially a compilation of the various materials of character options and information needed to play the game, all in one place that's searchable and filterable and more easily accessed for reference as opposed to read in a single sitting. We have a version of that now for the 2013 edition, which, thanks to our Kickstarter backers, this was like my big dream, was to get this out there. We were able to do so, and we've learned a lot by building that particular one that we have out there now. We've learned a lot about how it's used. Constantly has a very, very respectable user number on a weekly basis. as people reference, obviously spiking on Saturdays when people are going out to play. But we also think that we can improve upon it significantly with the next edition. And one of the ways that we really want to improve upon it is to make character creation a thing that can be accomplished electronically in addition to pen and paper. And by that, I mean having a character wizard and a online accessible database that players can store their characters and manage their troops from. I think having that, which is something that even all the way back in laws we had via Grapevine as a kind of off-the-shelf version of that. I think having that tool out there for the next edition will enormously benefit it, because if there's one thing that artistic, creative people are not necessarily the same people who are very good bureaucrats and bookkeepers. They can be, but often they're not. And so by making it easier for the creative and artistic folks to run their games without all the hassle of, having, oh gosh, I've seen troops do it a bunch of different ways, but needless to say, the hodgepodge of solutions we have nowadays, having a good standard option that anybody could adopt and is out of the box, I think is going to make it really easy to get new games going, and hopefully easier to keep them running, because you'll have that tool to support your activities as a storyteller. So to answer, yes, we intend to have an SRD, and we intended to have more features, better features. Now, the time frame for that may be a little bit after the release of the book. It will all depend, and we'll discuss that more as we get closer to the campaign.
And speaking of the book, Ryan, we have a few more questions that rolled in. One of which is, will lore sheets transfer from tabletop to LARP, and vice versa?
Conceptually, yes. We are using lore sheets from tabletop. We have simplified them and modified their mechanics such that they reflect the LARP system that we have created. So if you love the First Inquisition lore sheet or Descendant of Hardestat, you will see a LARP version of it in the book. And different lore sheets will appear in future releases as well.
I know that we talked about, for some reason talking about lore sheets made me think back to our earlier discussion about, some new things that are coming in and some old things that we are adjusting or fixing, such as celerity, which we already discussed, and the removal of multiple rounds of multiple celerity rounds, as well as, we talked about the woes of mass combat, which brings me back to the storyteller days of old of mine, when I think about influence and having to go through all the different influence actions. And somebody did actually ask, what influence system will the new book be using? So
this is the part of the system that I am most excited about. So Jason, do you mind if I
Go ahead.
jump on this one? I love it. All right. So as a storyteller of many a local game, I have experienced what I like to call the 1 hour downtime, where it's one player with 3 downtime actions and a computer's action and science actions and allies contact templates. It's untenable for the storytellers. That's actually one of the biggest complaints I hear from storytellers. Guys, we hear you. We hear you. So here's how downtimes and influence is going to work. I'm just going to tell you. People get 3 downtimes. That's it. It's great. Your backgrounds, your mortal connections, so your contacts and your allies, these fill the functions of influence. It's vampires pulling strings within the world to get things done. We present to you the spheres of influence that exist, and you put your contact, your ally in there, and then they act from the position of that sphere of influence. There is no separate big influence mini game. When if Jason has an ally that wants to steal an art piece from my Toreador's museum, and I have an ally who's guarding that thing, it is as simple as rock, paper, scissors. We tell you how to break the tie. It's very simple. It's just based on rating. Rock, paper, scissors. And then the storyteller gets to tell the story. How did it happen? how did Jason's 3-dot thief defeat my 1-dot security guard, or whatever the case may be. It's meant to be fast, it's meant to be streamlined, and the influences become part of a downtime action. So if my downtime action is I want to find out where the art piece is and steal it, I get the contact to tell me where it is, I get the ally to go and get it.
So Corgan, you said something that sparked in my mind to ask about, which I know the answer to, but I don't know if the community knows the answer to. You mentioned rock, paper, scissors. By Night Studios, historical products have run on that rock, paper, scissors sort of challenge. Is that going to carry over into this new book in the new V5 setting?
Yes. Part of the streamlining of the system is we have sped up the math so that rock, paper, scissors use can lean into what it's best for, which is speed of resolution. So yes, you'll see it. It'll be familiar from the 2013 version, but the underlying mathematics are sped up so you can get through those RPS challenges even faster than before.
And now, Jason, you alluded to earlier how there's a number of other outlines for books. We did have a question that was, do you have any plans to roll out some guides to go along with the new rules?
So one of the things that we've discussed is a quick start guide. And this is probably new to most everybody, including Ryan and Chris. My design process for that is we want to have a very short book that has a pre-generated character for each of the clan's archetypes. So in the core book, you're going to have 3 archetypes for each clan. And we're going to build a pre-gen for that archetype. So if you're reading the Nosferatu and you look at one of the archetypes and you're like, I want to play that, we have a ready-built sheet for you for that. In addition, we want to have a sort of a rules light. I'm just trying LARP for the very first time. So you're going to get your character sheet. You're going to have your 3 discipline powers. And it's not going to tell you the full mechanics of the power, but it's going to tell you essentially what that power does. And what I want that to do is a new player is then going to be able to spend a resource that is only available for new players to go, I want to use this power. And it's going to work for them as long as they spend this resource. Now, in an effort to teach them the core mechanics of the game, another more veteran player can then go, keep your resource. I'm going to explain to you very quickly how this power actually works. So it's a way for people to teach within the game in a fair manner. And it's designed basically for a brand new player to basically use those rules once or twice, their first couple of games, and then decide, is this mechanical based system of V5 LARP what I want to play? Or maybe they've also tried War of Ages and they like the more collaborative Nordic style game. And so because we're releasing multiple books and multiple ways to play, you now have that choice. And what I want that quick start guide to do is sort of allow a brand new player to dip their toes into the mechanics very simply and have other players, not just the ST, helping them come along and make the decision for what they're going to have the most fun doing. And that will probably be one of the I'm hoping it'll be one of the very first Kickstarter tiers to sort of unlock that quick start guide. If it's not just not even part of the tiers, it's just something that we're promising.
So we have a question from the audience here. I think this one is a good one to answer live because I don't know how to answer it myself. The writers are probably the right one for this one. Are there any plans to convert the institutional conflict rules from the Camarilla book to the new LARP system? Or will that be considered to fall under the simplification of the influence systems?
Yes, so we have the coteries rules, which explain how to make domains for yourself. And those are written kind of on top of the influence system that Corgan described earlier. It basically allows you to share your contacts and the advantages that your contacts have with each other, but it also gives stats to the domain. So if you've settled the typical warehouse downtown sort of thing, that is your domain. You can add deterrence and advantages to that domain so that if people are trying to affect you, they have to get past the deterrence of your domain. Likewise, if you're using your contacts and allies in your own domain, they do things better. So yes, we have brought in the coterie system, be it coteries for Camarilla, gangs for the Anarchs, stuff like that. The organizational group play is built on top of and streamlined within the influence and moral connection system.
I'd like to jump in to answer a question that we received a couple of times informally, not for this webinar specifically, but one that I think should be addressed because you spoke about it earlier, Jason, and that is whether a more War of Ages style or a more Laws of the Night 5th edition is the right way to play. You know, my general opinion on this, and I think it's the right opinion, so to speak, is that both are good. And they both have their strengths, they both have their weaknesses. I think the Laws of the Night style, the little bit crunchier, some more mechanical base, is a little bit stronger for a improvisational monthly playing game because it lends itself to more dynamism. I think the War of Ages style is much stronger for a planned blockbuster style event because it really lends itself to having negotiated everything ahead of time in kind of workshop scenarios and everybody having a very explicit idea. To my question of are we splitting the ice? I really don't think so. With the two different products, we released V2 previously, and then we released War of Ages last year on Kickstarter. Of the two, there really wasn't all that much overlap between the supporters of both groups. There are some that supported both, but by and large, the amazing fans who helped support the books were different fans, and I think that it just goes to say that there is a bit of a dichotomy out there. Some folks will enjoy one style and some folks will not enjoy another, and which you as a player enjoy best is really up to you. But from my perspective, both should be supported as official LARP releases on a regular basis. And yes, we do plan to develop more War of Ages line books in addition to the V5 line. Laws of the Night V5.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and there was a question posed that will War of Ages and the new Laws of the Night be connected at all? And I think you know, I think Ryan touched on that a little bit. I think the answer is yes, they're connected in that they are both in the V5 setting, and they both have tools at the end of the day that you as storytellers or as players can choose to take those tools and use them to make the game what you find most comfortable, most enjoyable. And I guess is how I would answer.
So with that said, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Mr. Rat here. Mr. Rat is a character that we're creating. Well, Mark, do you want to just kind of jump in and explain? You'll be providing some more information about our upcoming releases in short YouTube formats. But let people get at least a taste of the character.
Is it on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Lovely. Hello, everybody. I'm going to be Mr. Rat. So I'm hoping to, over the course of the upcoming years and that, to deliver information of what By Night Studios is up to, some information about upcoming products and stuff like that, and basically just try and engage with you lot and have fun in a, you know, a fashion like this. So I hope you all enjoy my face, as I'm hoping you'll be seeing more of it.
JD asked a question. I already answered it in chat, but let me just speak it to the group as well. You know, when the new SRD comes out for V5, do we intend to keep the old SRD available for players of the 2013 edition? Of course, for the foreseeable future. I would not under any circumstances, attempt to take away something that we've given to the community just to provide some kind of illusory support of a new product. I don't think that that really works. Yeah, that about sums up that question.
So Ryan, before we move on, I just want to go back to the question that Rem asked about the institutional conflict rules from Camarilla on page 192 and 193 of that book. The answer is institutional conflict rules specifically will not be appearing in the core book, but that doesn't mean we won't consider them for future books. Those are rules for conflicts between organizations at a national and global level, and that's something that the development team will have to discuss and think about.
Yep, sorry, I mistook the question for coteries and domains and not those 2 pages.
So I do want to, I know, well, I guess Ryan's going to check to see if we have any other questions pending. I do want to give a little bit of another side announcement as well, because there was a question that was posed, which I'm going to address in a second too. But I want to give a little side announcement, which is that Finite Studios in New Orleans on the 12th will be running a number of talks on November 12th. To give people something to do who are in New Orleans during the day. We'll see what we can do about, recording those so we can post them later for those who can't attend, but we do intend to do some product demos. I wanted to let everybody know that we have Ajit and Strix, who are big game designers and big in D&D, who will be talking about writing and designing award-winning games. Justin from Paradox is going to be present. He's going to talk about, Justin Achille from Paradox will be present to talk about world building for World of Darkness. And he will also be giving a sneak peek at W5. And I mentioned that because there was a question posed to, well, when am I going to see LARP Werewolf again? And we can tell you that, when W5 comes out, obviously a product of Finite Studios will be that conversion to LARP. So it's on the horizon. It's in works by Paradox and W5. So I wanted to share that with you. In addition, Jason and Corrigan will be present in New Orleans, and they're going to give another V5 panel discussion. And Kevin from Renegade and Johanna and I will be talking about some other World of Darkness products, some of their products, and some more information about War of Ages as well. And then again, we're going to do some other product demos. But I just wanted to put that out there so people know that we plan to do some more information sharing, and that yes, there is Werewolf in the future for those of you who are asking about Werewolf.
With that said, I think we've come to the kind of the crux of all the questions that we've received so far. I'd like to give everybody the opportunity to post any last ones in there. Of course, you can always reach out to us. We are not hard to get hold of. I'm on Discord nearly every day in our community server. But if you could all take a moment to just fill out a quick poll that I put up. Basically just wanted, we were testing something new out with this Zoom webinar. Previously, we had done these kind of AMAs on Discord, but I think it has some real weaknesses compared to a more formalized structure like this. So just if you could tell me if you liked it, you didn't, or you have mixed feelings, I'd be very appreciative. Oh, it looks like we have everybody answered. Everybody liked it. Great. Well, with all that said, everyone, I want to thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much for your support of Finite Studios products, for the hobby in general, and I hope to play with you soon.